Well, folks, this week we listened to one of the most popular, most requested, most covered, and a song that should be at 2 billion streams on Spotify before too long. This week, of course, it's Queen, Somebody to Love. Well, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to PLD Projects Crown Jewels. I'm your host, PLD, and this, of course, is the podcast where I take you on a journey through the entire Queen catalog, one song at a time. This week, Somebody to Love. We're going to listen to 8 different versions and figure out which one is the best, or as the title says, the Crown Jewel version to put into our ultimate playlist. I'm going to give you some history. I'm going to see if this song slides into my top 10 Queen songs of all time. And basically, we're going to have a little bit of fun. Now, how do we listen to it? Well, I'm not going to get struck. I don't want to get any copyright, anything like that. So what we're going to do, I put links below in the descriptions. When we get to that point of the podcast, you're going to pause the podcast, go listen to the track on YouTube. Then you're going to come back. We'll talk about it, and we'll figure it out. And I'd love you guys to leave some comments. Let me know what you think is the crown jewel, because you might not agree with me. You might say, PLD, you are nuts. Maybe I am. I don't know. But all I can do is listen to it, have you listen to it, come up with a final answer for at least this week. All right, so let's get into it. Written by Freddie Mercury, features Freddie on lead vocals, piano, and as part of the gospel choir. Brian May on guitars and the gospel choir. John Deacon on that bass guitar. Roger Taylor on drums, and again, that gospel choir. John is not on the gospel choir, despite the music video you've seen. Definitely he is joined for visual sake, but he's not singing as far as I know, as far as anybody claims. So this was the big single from A Day at the Races. Much as Bohemian Rhapsody was the big single from A Night at the Opera, this was probably the most famous song from the album. It did hit number 2 in the UK, hit number 13 in the US. It was also issued as a single in Australia, where it hit number 22. Denmark, France, Japan, where it stalled at 51. Mexico, the Netherlands, where it hit number 1. Poland, Portugal, Turkey, and Yugoslavia, amongst others. This song was definitely played live quite a bit. Played live through 1982 in full. They kind of truncated it down as part of a medley in the 1984-85 concerts, as they did for a lot of their songs, trying to fit in as many snippets as they possibly could. It was not performed in the Matted Tour, the final Queen tour with Freddie Mercury, but it was resurrected infamously at the Freddie Mercury tribute concert with George Michael. It even sparked rumors that George Michael and Queen would be joining forces and touring. And in fact, I think that actually came a little bit closer than you might think, although it definitely didn't happen full on, obviously. That was actually performance was so well loved. It's cited as the greatest performance of the night. Not my personal favorite, but it is very, very good. It actually was released as a single in its own right as part of an EP called 5 Live in 1993. A year later, George Michael and Queen's performance of It's Somebody to Love. Also the performance of These Are the Days of Our Lives from the Innuendo album with Lisa Stansfield. A couple of tracks from George Michael live, and then also a Queen track, just purely Queen at that point, Dear Friends from the Sheer Heart Attack album. It was released in America and England, the UK, where it hit number 1 in the UK as a single. It was kind of a weird thing. It was a single, but it was an EP, and the EP in America didn't quite fare as well. It hit number 46, but still was a very, very famous version, and definitely going to be covering that as well. A lot of live stuff to cover this week. Got a lot of live stuff. It was then put away again before we went out live. Did not get played during the Queen and Paul Rodgers era. Brian did resurrect it as part of his tours with Carrie Ellis because it fit Carrie Ellis's voice so well. And of course, when Adam Lambert came on board, Adam Lambert would start performing it with Queen quite a bit, giving some great performances, and we'll cover one of those as well. Now, Freddie often cited Aretha Franklin as one of his biggest influences, and this is really a dedication to her, as if not by actual words, by the gospel stylings. You definitely listen to Aretha and want to basically be Aretha for a number, as they would say. Roger Taylor specifically said it's Aretha Franklin influence. Freddie's very much into that. He tried to keep the track in a loose gospel type feel. I think it's the loosest track we've ever done. And that was Roger talking to Circus Magazine in 1977. Freddie followed up on Australian radio in 1977 saying, from my point of view, okay, Bohemian Rhapsody, big hit. But I think a song like Somebody to Love is, in my estimation, from the writing aspect, a better song. It has been noted. I don't know if Freddie actually said it. I can't find a quote on that specifically, but many people have said that Somebody to Love might have been Freddie's favorite Queen song. Perhaps he thinks of it as peak Queen. Brian May, much later on the commentary to Absolute Greatest, which was a greatest hits album that was truncated to one CD. Basically took greatest hits 1 and 2 and just put it onto one CD, the 20 best tracks. They did commentary on it. Brian said, again, an immaculate backing track. It's Freddie and Roger and John, driven by his amazingly rhythmic piano. A great feel, just great feel. It's not a mess with, and these days you have to Pro Tool it and put everything in the right place before you let it out. But this is just real and futuristic playing. Done in bits as well, wasn't it? Because there's a couple of bits which we didn't even use. I seem to remember, well, at least one bit we didn't use. I get that. Well, that could have been played out at a convention. In fact, there was a convention demo that is leaked, but maybe it's a time to bring that up now. Often, if you've been a long-time listener of the podcast, you'll know that I did play a lot of the convention demos, and I've kind of tried to put them in the rankings. And then more recently, I've been like, I don't think I'll ever put them in the rankings because they are always covered. They're always bad recording. They're just basically tape recorded as they were played in a convention. And all the time it has Greg Brooks, one of the Queen production people, saying over the top of it every couple minutes, every couple of seconds, property of Queen Productions. It's not something I'm going to put in a playlist. However, I do understand the curiosity factor. I hunt them down when they're out there to hear every different version that Queen did. So it is in the description below if you want to take a listen to it. I'm not talking about it as far as the rankings go or anything like that. I'm not going to talk about anything specific about it, but I will say there are a couple of cool, interesting moments in there that if you're a big fan of the song, it might be interesting for you to hear. So I'll do that for you, but we won't actually talk about it any further on the podcast. But let's move on and let's go into it. Let's listen to the studio version. And then we will come back and talk for more. Like I said, in that description below, there's the link. Click on that. We'll come back and talk about the studio version of Queen, Somebody to Love. Somebody to love. Well, there it is. I'm sure you've all heard that song before. It's one of Queen's most popular, as I said on top. But let's talk about it a little bit. What a great feel. What Roger said about being loose definitely comes into play, especially towards the end. I love how it starts, instead of starting like with the choir, as you hear later on with That Bottom Girl, it just kind of comes in with the big choir. Like in the studio, you don't need to like show the tuning process or getting ready. But I do hear you hear like one piano chord play, like a ding, almost like getting the voices ready, like this is the key we're in. Okay, and then they start into the can anybody, like gives it a live in the studio kind of feel right away. It kind of has that momentum to it, which gives you more of a feel of passion. I think I really do feel that way. It's like this is something they're just doing. They're not perfecting it, despite the band being such perfectionists. And not to say that the song isn't a perfectionist type song. The vocal overdubs are nuts. So but it is kind of a little bit of a feel. It's a little I think it's kind of a trick you can pull to make you feel some way. Obviously, Queen vocal choir, full display. Which is why it is just compared to Bo Rap on occasion. Because there's just as many vocal overdubs, or it seems like that at least. The highs, the lows, and everything in between. It's a full choir sound. Now, if you listen to the verses, you really can pick out what Brian was saying about that rhythmic piano. Freddie really plays that. It's like a second drum almost, but like with melody. Like because you have Roger's drums, which are massive sounding in the song. As always, they tend to be big sounding. You have Freddie. It's not just the melody he plays, it's how he hits the beat. It's a secondary rhythm thing. Like when Freddie, Roger, and John really hit that groove together, man, it's nuts. It's really nuts. All right, this track's got one of Freddie's most emotional vocals, period. Freddie, his personal life, I don't ever dive too deep into personal lives here, but he was always striving for love. He often felt alone. I think that had to do something with maybe his sexuality, struggling with sexuality. And he found a lot of sex, found a lot of like rock star affection, that kind of thing. Always felt kind of lonely in his soul. As he gets to know later on, he has some interviews about that. I kind of feel this is why it's one of his more emotional vocals. he really feels that he wants to find somebody to love. Um, Brian's guitar sounds just as emotional in solo section, wailing away at times. I mean, Brian's a precision player versus something like a David Gilmour, who is just a kind of a motive player. But Brian really can hit those emotional moments, even while he's being precise, and really why he's being very clear about his momentum and everything else. But it's a really great sound. And one of my favorite Brian solos. It really fits Freddie's vocal as well. As we get to the third verse, I really love hearing how much Freddie plays the rhythm, especially while he's singing about rhythm. I'm losing my rhythm. I'm okay. I'm all right. It's a great little play, little slow ragtime. Like they were saying, it's loose. There's a loose kind of feel, and that's what fits. But Freddie always stays in the moment. Really powerful stuff. Of course, we get to the building nearly a cappella choir. Roger's big drums are there, with Freddie kind of over the top of it all, kind of adding some extra flourishes, the clapping going on. It's a great build. I love builds and songs. This really does have that building moment until the very end where Freddie gives this wonderful falsetto. It's crisp, cutting. Oh, it's such a great note, great, wonderful moment. Yeah, it's a very lovely song. But one of the things I definitely want to mention before I move on, one of the hearts of the song that's really going to become clear more in the live version than the studio version is the backing choir at the end, where they're kind of having this little jam out type session where the choir is just doing somebody to love, find me somebody. And it's really Roger leading the fray on that. But he really lands those somebody who loves, allowing Freddie to kind of play more on top. His little ad libs, his little flourishes, wonderful thing. And then, of course, it ends Freddie tinkling on the piano just a little bit. It's a nice little flourish at the end as well. What a beautiful song. What a powerful song. What a fun, rocking, emotional ballad. I know it's kind of a misnomer, a rocking ballad, but it's really got a feel, that emotional feel of a rock song, rock gospel song, but it's definitely love ballad. It's wonderful. And the next one is from the 1991 Hollywood remaster when Hollywood Records got the Queen catalog. They released everything on CD and they had bonus tracks. And unfortunately, instead of diving deep into the archives and giving us bonus tracks we hadn't heard, outtakes, things of that nature, which we got a couple, they tended to do more remixes of songs. We got this one, Somebody to Love Was on the Day at the Races, Hollywood remaster, mixed by a man named Randy Badass, who is the nephew of Herb Alpert and a co-writer of Notorious B.I.G.'s Hypnotized. He remixed Somebody to Love. And it's actually, interestingly enough, it's pretty close to the original. It's very similar. There's just more added, which we'll get to here. So it's one of my more liked remixes that we got. I just wish we got more outtakes instead. That's all my own personal preference. But right now, that's what we got to listen to. So hit that pause, come back for more. Let's listen to the Hollywood remix from 1991. Well, there you have it, the 1991 remix by Randy Badass. Not very different, really the same as far as structure goes. It's more about playing with the mixes and the vocals for the most part. A lot more phasing to the vocals, and they try to build up more of an echo, which to me, I don't like it as much. It kind of feels like it fills in what little space Queen left. When Queen's leaving space, it's probably a good thing because they don't leave a lot of space. So you got to leave them the little space that they do leave. It doesn't cover a bit of a different Freddie vocal work for Brian's solo, and then again out of the solo. And then again, and we don't have the tinkling piano. Freddie actually ended on a Freddie voice. I don't know if it's like what Freddie recorded and they faded it out on the original version, or if this is just a different outtake version they use. Sometimes they have the access to that. It also cuts off like completely before the choir builds, and it's a bit more of a build and more of again, it's kind of like that phasing sound. That's what kind of makes the choir sound even bigger. It does add a little more Freddie flourishes on top. But overall, the structure is the same. And while I definitely prefer the original version, this remix is not bad to listen to. In fact, it's interesting to listen to as a curio. It's not a remix you're like, oh, it totally destroys the song. Why am I bothering? This gives you some alternate vocals. So it's a nice little curio, as you say. But yeah, let's move on into the next one. We're going to get into the live versions now. First one we're going to listen to, well, I got a little bit of a story and a little bit of confession. Now, if you've been listening for a while, you know I listen to all the versions as I can. I let you listen to them. I come back and talk about it. And at the end, I go through and make a decision as to what's my favorite, especially when there's like, 8 to 10 versions we're listening to. It's like one or two. I'm usually pretty clear about which one I like or which one I prefer. But in cases that there's 8 or 9 versions, usually is some hemming hawing over which one I like better. I have to admit, I know what's going on before I even pressed record today. I knew it was happening. I know my favorite. I know which one's going to win. It's going to be this one. So, spoiler alert. I know this way through. I just spoiled the episode. You don't even have to skip to the end now. This is my favorite version because, quite frankly, as far as I know, I'll leave it open because I'm listening to every song again as I go through this. This is my favorite Queen song and my favorite version of any Queen song. Somebody to Love from Montreal in 1981 on the Queen Rock Montreal Blu-ray and also on CD as well. This, to me, is the version. I actually will fully admit I spent hours watching people react to watching this for the first time. It's the best definition of Queen, especially live, that you can get. Obviously, it doesn't have the full studio effects. They don't have the full vocal choir. They have to do what they got to do. But it really showcases all 4 members doing what they do best, being great musicians, great entertainers, great, just great. I don't want to say anything. Hit pause. Go down to those comments. Find Queen Rock Montreal version, and then we'll come back and I'll gush on it for a little bit further. Hands down, my favorite version by far. I just want to gush about it all day. Like I said, I just watched YouTube. I probably spent hours watching reactions to people watching that for the first time. It's just amazing to me. Freddie opens up at the piano, just tooling around like a boss, just singing notes, just playing along. All eyes are on him. He's got the crowd at the palm of his hand. He knows what he's doing, but he's going to play. He's going to have some fun. He doesn't care. He's going to have some fun. No acapella opening. We don't have the same opening. We're going to play a little bit riff, a little loose. And then Freddie just starts blistering out with this somebody from the big climactic moment with the big runs and everything, just getting you ready to go. And that's just the intro. And he's like, I'm ready. Okay, let's do it. And he gets into it. Oh, so good. No falsetto at this point. Freddie just full voice, rocking out, being emotive. It's awesome that even without the choir, there's no backing tape here, guys. There's no backing tapes playing. This is just Freddie, Brian, and Roger singing. That's all. Nothing in the background. They still sound like a choir. I mean, Roger and Brian specifically, because Freddie's doing some other stuff here and there. Roger and Brian do backing vocals. And I'm going to be quite frank. I love Brian. It's mostly Roger. It fills in these backing vocals that sound like it's a choir themselves. It just has this full rocking energy sound. Of course, Freddie comes back, I'm out. Oh, his voice is, oh my God, so beautiful. John's bass is a delight. He gets lost sometimes amongst all the Freddie antics and Roger being loud and Brian's guitar playing. John's bass, if you just sit and isolate that, it's an adventure on its own. It's a little journey on its own. And I gotta tell you, Roger singing and drumming and making it look easy never cease to amaze me. This guy is a lead vocalist on the drum kit. That's such a key. I mean, I will never, ever deny Freddie Mercury any laurels, any honors he's given, the love that everybody has for him. But I feel like Roger Taylor is so underrated as a musician. He's not in the top drummers. They always say never hear Roger Taylor in the top drummers. And he's a great drummer, but he's an even better musician, a lead vocalist who can play drums so massively and really hold down the vocals, the drums, everything out. He is, honestly speaking, in my opinion, the secret sauce, the secret heart of Queen. Freddie is like the overall, that's what you see and hear, that gets in your face. Roger's that hankering down below that just provides this foundation. It's all 4 members are equally important, but I really I do favor Roger a little bit compared to some other people. I mean, I love them all, and you'll never get that worried about any of them. You only hear me say good things. But there's a part of me that really loves Roger Taylor's singing and got a more rocking sound from Freddie in the middle, more growling instead of being all airy as it can be. This is more of a live in your face moment. Brian's guitar sounds even better live. I'm sorry, like the studio version, I said it was emotive, being precise. This is like even less precise and more emotive that fits the version of the song. It's kind of like sped up tempo. I think I didn't even say it at the beginning. This tempo is much more sped up. It's like me, because I'm so excited talking a mile a minute right now. It's like that. The band's tempo just keeps it chugging like a train, going faster and faster, but never, ever losing control. It's really amazing. And then they have Freddie playing with the crowd a little bit more. The third verse, Roger drum sounds more massive. Freddie gets up, starts playing, owning them, and to clap along, sing along, play along with them and everything. And there's the build, which is so well done, despite again, it's just the three of them. It still sounds like a gospel choir. It's amazing. They get to the end, he has a big moment, they stop. Freddie just takes a sip of beer because he can, because he's a boss. He's right in the middle. He's like, no, I play a middle note, takes a beer, and then blasts it out full of voice. No falsetto again, not the falsetto moment, just kind of blasting out this bull. Somebody in love with this most soulful run, most soulful white man I've ever heard. Blast full of voice. I love it so much. And then after that, that's when Roger kicks back in. You have this basis of Roger, find me somebody. It's a rhythmic too. Love, find me. While Freddie's getting to play, he's going to play all these things, and he does some falsetto here. Some great big moments, some beautiful parts. It's such, and it's a jam session they start having in between, like with the four of them, back and forth, back and forth. It's such musicianship, so tight, so entertaining, make it all look simple. And they ended, Roger getting this great moment at the end. Oh, what Freddie pounding on the piano. I don't even know what it is. I love this version. I'm sorry that I couldn't keep my emotions in check. This is going to be number one. This is my crown. But I still want to listen to the rest because there's still some fun stuff to listen to as well. I love this song so much. Without any further ado, we'll move on to the next version. And the next version is good. I got to be honest with you. It's from 1982 at Milton Keynes. This version was actually my favorite for a while. The Rock Montreal kind of had to grow on me a little bit more comparatively. It's a very similar basis, very similar function, very similar arrangement and everything else, a lot of the same type of things. So let's listen to that, and I'll come back and we'll talk about Milton Keynes, which is now the one I listen to lesser compared to Montreal. So I'm actually more interested to see what I have to say about Milton Keynes now, my previous favorite one. Click on that link, come back for more. Can you find me? Woo-wee, that was really 1A. I gotta tell you, that's if Montreal's one, that's 1A. You can listen to them both, and they're both very exciting, very fun, very similar. Obviously, the setup is the same, the arrangement is the same, performance is very similar in ways. Something to like better in Montreal, something to like better in Milton Keynes. The one way it is a little better in Milton Keynes is the crowd. I believe how the audience was set up to be recorded in Montreal made him sound a little quieter, whereas Milton Keynes, the audience is really this is loud and raucous. They play along with Freddie. They start trying to sing along with him as well. They're really into it. Yeah, we could tell that right from the beginning. I actually enjoy the middle Freddie vocal section in Milton Keynes right before Brian's guitar solo. A little less growly and more he tries to sing some notes that are a little bit different. Similarly placed, but still, I prefer that vocal at one point or another. Roder doesn't have quite as much of the ending. He kind of is a little bit buried comparatively. Maybe that's why I prefer Montreal to a degree. Freddie is very playful in this one, though. I do love the beginning of the intro. I do love the radio. Are you ready? You ready, brothers and sisters? At the end, right before the drum session for the build, I just gotta be free. I tell you, really feels the song really powerful. Again, it's Montreal for me, but this, if you play with this, I'm not going to be unhappy. Let's put it that way. All right, let's move on then to the next one we got for you. This is probably one of the most infamous recordings. Like I mentioned earlier, Queen and George Michael doing Somebody to Love at the Freddie Mercury tribute concert in 1992, the concert for AIDS awareness. It's in the description below. Click it. Come back for more. Each morning I get up, all right, that's a very emotional version, especially because of the event, obviously. You can really tell if you're watching the video specifically how affected Brian, Roger, and John are. I think performing all these songs without Freddie, it was it's just a really heartbreaking, tough thing for them to do. Obviously, the most recent thing I can think of that fits this description would be the Foo Fighters tribute to Taylor Hawkins. Same with Dave Grohl and the rest of the band having difficulty performing these songs like without their brother. Freddie out in front singing, it's tough. It's tough. You can tell that. They actually do have a full gospel choir this time, the London Community Gospel Choir. Of course, that kind of takes Roger and Brian off the hook a little bit as far as the backing vocals go. They also have some other backing vocalists there, friends of theirs as well. And that pianist, by the way, not Mike, it's Mike Moran, not Spike Edney, who is with him and everywhere. Mike Moran was a very A good friend of Freddie actually co-wrote the Barcelona, helped produce the Barcelona album that we'll get to eventually in Freddie Mercury's solo era, playing the piano there. I can understand, certainly I can understand why people rate this the best performance of the night. I mean, George delivered a pristine vocal, much better vocal. He had the range that not many other performers really had through the course of the night, which we'll get to as we get through all the rest of the songs. I think if I had to be a little negative, it's almost too pristine of a vocal. I kind of like Freddie's little rough little letting those emotions tinge in towards a little almost too perfect. That's what you can say as a negative. It's too perfect. But it's really good. I do love the moment when he lets the crowd deliver the end of the falsetto section. It's a nice touch, and you get to see a big smile on Brian's face after that. It's just a well done version of the song. It's no doubt about it. It's one of the better performances of the night, and it was a really fitting tribute to the great Freddie Mercury. So, well, all right, let's move on from there. Before we do some more Queen versions, I'm going to slide one in that's a little different here. Brian May and Carrie Ellis. I mentioned a few times before, Carrie Ellis originated the role of Meat in the We Will Rock You musical on the West End. And Brian developed a great professional relationship with her as far as starting to produce albums from her. They did a couple of albums together. They actually toured together quite a few times. One of the concerts they did release was the Candlelight concerts, and in that, they do a cover of Somebody to Love. Now, the concerts where they did some of their own stuff, some show tunes, some Queen stuff. This time they do Somebody to Love. So it's in the description below. Come back. We'll talk about it. It's a different version, probably the most unique version we're going to listen to tonight. Oh, I tried. Well, there you have it. It's Candlelight concerts, a set of acoustic concert that Brian would do with Carrie Ellis and Jeff Leach on keyboards. That's just the three of them. That's it. No big band, a very stripped down version. Brian would sometimes play a little bit of the Red Special towards the end. He put solo in there. Can't keep away from the electric. That's just not something you do with Brian May. But for the most part, it was the acoustic arrangement of the song. I love the opening bit. Brian and Jeff kind of freestyle along a very sweet version of the song. It's totally different arrangement. It's not the big gospel choir, not the religious experience, not the big emotive pleading. It's sweet version. Definitely a little influence of West End. Obviously, Carrie Ellis being a West End singer. It seems like it could come from the musical itself. But it's a nice laid back version. I do like it. Brian gets to start on lead vocals for the verse. Interesting to hear him sing the Freddie song in a way. You get to hear Brian and Carrie duetting with some help from the audience. They get a piano solo instead of the guitar solo from Jeff, and it does fit the arrangement very well. I like getting to hear Brian sing a little bit. And quite frankly, it's interesting. The most interesting part for me is we get to hear Brian's harmony kind of isolated. Because Brian basically sings what he would sing in the Queen concert. It's a little different style. It's still kind of the same harmony. And he sometimes did get a little overpowered from Roger's big, high power backing vocals and, Freddie's big, blustering leading vocal. His middle section, which is very important, but does get kind of sometimes a little covered up. It's nice to hear that as crystal clear next to Carrie Ellis's vocals. So the crowd's there having a good time, singing along, swinging along. Not much you can say. I do enjoy it quite a bit. It probably would not be in my crown jewel, the best versions of them, but as a curio or something alternative, it's not bad. I would love to see a concert where Brian does this. The kind of concerts are a lot of fun, much more laid back versions, unplugged. But yeah, so all right, let's move forward. Next one we're going to listen to. Well, I kind of struggled with doing this one, although it's kind of the only official version we have of it. The next one we're going to do is Queen was on American Idol during 2012. And they were also showcasing Queen Extravaganza. Now, what Queen Extravaganza was, and is today even, is the official Queen tribute band put together by Roger Taylor with some help from Brian. It was mostly Roger's baby with Spike Edney. Roger decided he was tired of seeing all these tribute bands just doing all this stuff and not putting on a great concert specifically. He didn't mention any names specifically, and there are some good tribute bands that aren't out there, but he thought it'd be kind of cool to put together the officially sanctioned Queen tribute band. They got access to the Queen videos for their and footage and stuff they can use for the show, lighting designs, everything else. And Roger handpicked the people to form Queen Extravaganza. Most famously from that is Mark Martel, who went on to do a note perfect Somebody to Love rendition. Sounds a lot like Freddie. He even went on to work with the band as far as Bohemian Rhapsody for the movie. He filled in some vocals here and there. Has a great relationship with Roger and Brian. And so during the Queen night at American Idol, the next night during the results, Queen Extravaganza got to play. And I'm playing this. Should I spoil a surprise? The reason why I can play this here is at the end of the song, Brian and Roger join the rest of the band. And so it's Queen Extravaganza plus Brian and Roger. And most importantly, is the arrangement they do, which they do go on to play with Adam Lambert in the beginning part. Now, eventually, they did revert back to a more traditional version of the song. But luckily, the version we hear, the officially released live version, comes from the 2016 Isle of Wight concert, and they, in fact, do the up-tempo ending. So you get to hear first the American Idol version where it debuted, and the full band with Adam Lambert doing the same arrangement afterward. First up, though, American Idol. Click on that link, come back for more, and we'll go from there. Well, there that is. Of course, the other more famous person, also Jeff Scott Soto, you saw there doing the other vocals with the long-haired guy. He had a student Journey, as well as with Big Mountains team. He's been around. He's a journeyman, but he's a very, very good rock and roll singer. In fact, he did a Queen concert for a fan club back in the day. That was phenomenal. With set list with all these, the big Queen fan, very deep, deep cuts. And no, was a rumor true or not? I know Jeff is friends with Brian and Roger both. There was a rumor at one point when Paul Rogers was on tour with them that his voice was under the weather, and that Jeff Scott Soto was kind of on retainer, possibly fill in. It never happened, but that's a rumor I heard. I don't know if that's true or not, to be totally honest. Maybe I shouldn't even say that because I really don't. One last little bit of tidbit of information before I get into the actual song. Tristan Avakian, who's one of the guitarists, the guitarist who's playing behind his head. I got to meet him when he was in the We Will Rock You touring band as well. My friend, I mentioned Bob Wagner, who runs the great, fantastic website, queenlive.ca. I got to know him through some Queen websites and Queen Zone, things of that nature. The long live Queen Zone, whatever, it's gone now, but it was a great place for a long time. I got to meet him, and he was also in the touring band of We Will Rock You. And when it came to my local theater, I got to sit up in the pit band during the whole show, right next to Bob and Tristan, and they were really great. The band was phenomenal. It was all partly Queen Extravaganza, actually. It was also the keyboardist and the musical director was also involved in that. It was a wonderful time. But going on to this now, this version, this arrangement, obviously not much to talk about. This was one of the first times they played together. It was like kind of really early on, so they really hadn't got a chance to solidify and tighten. So they're not quite like amazing sounding as they would be. You got to understand that they were put together really recently at that point. They got much better as they went along. Not that this was bad at all. They definitely got more tighter as the shows went on. I got to see them in Boston. They put on a hell of a show. What I loved here is obviously the arrangement with the after the somebody to when Brian Rogers came out, they went upbeat, and then it's a really big jam ending. And it is this big double time through. They're rocking their brains out, and Brian somebody. I love the arrangement. I gotta say, it was unexpected. It was surprising. I was like, "What is this? What is this?" I think it's cool to do every once in a while. You got to change things up after you've been doing a song for like well over 30 years at that point. I mean, let's just shake it up a little bit. They did a good job with it. It was a nice, fun curio, nice little fun alternative version. So I wanted to listen to that one first, but now we get to hear Queen and Adam Lambert, the full band of Queen, doing the entire song, including that rocking upbeat ending, live from the Isle of Wight. Click that link below, come back, and we'll finish up the episode. Alrighty there, Adam taking us back to the church gospel version. Absolutely. This is one of the songs that I do think Adam performed very well. There's some people who don't like Adam for his over the topness, and he definitely goes over the top here, but I don't know, something to be said about this song needing it, or at least it's fitting for it, if nothing else. As I go through, you're going to hear me say something about versions of like Paul Roger, Adam Lambert, and Freddie Mercury, who does it best. It's almost always going to be Freddie for me. Freddie's voice is the original, the legendary. I mean, Paul and Adam are great. Both have their own strengths and weaknesses, so to speak. But I will admit, this is one of those songs that Adam does do very, very well. Very, very well. Man, the band is sweaty for watching the video. Isle of Wight in 2016. They are sweaty. They're having a good time, though. They're rocking it out. Brian Roger getting a little bit of help now these days. He had this particular concert. You had, as usual, Spike Edney on keyboards. You had Neil Fairclough on bass, and you had Roger's son, Rufus, Taylor Hawkins' godson. And I thought was going to be the next Foo Fighters drummer, but no, current Darkness drummer, Rufus Taylor, with some additional percussion. So the vocals, the backing vocals definitely got some boost there. You get to hear Brian Roger doing their thing a little bit, though. I definitely prefer the peak Queen days when it was just Brian Roger. Something about the purity of that makes it good for me. But it's more relaxed than the Queen version of live. Definitely a little more closer to the album version as far as tempo goes. Band's also much older. That might have something to do with it. Brian's guitar solo was very playful on this one. I kind of like his guitar solo quite a bit. He's still going to deliver after all these years. I can't wait to see him in October. Gospel very much in effect. A big moment there. Adam playing with the crowd quite a bit, taking a very Freddie-like moment instead of just somebody to making the crowd singing, sing it again, getting all into it before you get to that rock moment, the rock edge. So I like hearing that full band sound going into the rock and roll finale. So yeah, so it's a very, very cool version. All right, now let's get into our ranking of the versions and figure out what our crown jewel is, which I already told you the spoiler. So that's interesting. I know the top, I know the bottom. There's two positions I'm still warring with what I like better. So that's going to be the more interesting version this week. That takes place of what's the crown jewel, what's really number 3 and 4. But let's go. Easy bottom for me is the American Idol version. I played that specifically just so you could hear the introduction of that different kind of arrangement. Interesting to see Queen Extravaganza, but it's really Brian and Roger at the end. That's it. So I don't want that anywhere near my crown jewel version. If you have that Brian, at least Queen should be on the whole thing, nothing else. So up from that, I got the 1991 Hollywood remix. Might be a little low, but it's sometimes versions get put lower than they actually probably should be, if only because in this case, it's close enough to the album version that I'm going to want to listen to the album version unless it's kind of like an alternative curio kind of thing. So as far as Crown Jewels goes, the album version is the one that takes the place of this. It's not different enough to be really its own version. So it's kind of kicked down the list. I choose between the album and the 1991 mix. I take the album version. Therefore, the 1991 mix gets pushed down as compared to all the other alternate takes we have, different versions that are fun to listen to. Up from there, we have the Candlelight Concert version, the Brian and Carey version. Great fun, but nowhere near Crown Jewel. That's not that. If I need to pick a version that defines this song, not that song. This is the alternate version. This is like almost like the 1991 Hollywood remix. A lot of fun to listen to. I would love to see it live done this way. I like the unplugged version, but as far as a true Crown Jewel, no. Next up from there, we got the Freddie Mercury tribute concert. Again, I like it more purely Queen as I can. Having the gospel choir as get a nice curio, but I almost prefer just having the backing vocals be the band members. So it kind of takes a little bit away from it. Brian and Roger and John are kind of a little bit, it's an emotional version. Georgia's version is a little too pristine clear for me. Great version overall. It's kind of funny that it's slow. I never would have picked this one to be this low, but there's just other ones I like better. Here's the crux now between 3 and 4. Do I put the album version above the Queen and Adam Lambert Live Around the World version? Or do I do the blasphemic thing as far as most Queen fans would be concerned and put the Live Around the World version above the Queen studio version? It's tough because I love the Queen studio version, but as a whole, I prefer live versions of the song. There's something about the energy of doing it live with the audience that I really, really dig, and the playfulness of it and the looseness of it. If it's such a loose song, like Roger says, you can do that in the studio, but you can do it a lot better live. I also love the alternate rock and roll ending, the alternate arrangement of it. Yeah, that's really a fun one. And Adam really does come into his own here. But I can't do it. I can't do it. I'm going to put the Live Around the World version here, and just above that is the album. And that's not faint praise. The fact that I even considered it tells you how much I do appreciate Adam's version and the Live Around the World version. But the album version is the man's voice. It's the man whose emotive vocals on this are just phenomenal. He wrote this song, the full choir, the full overdub choir to get a different feel than the live version as well. But yes, that's where the album version is going to go, just over live around the world, which leads us to 1A and 1, like I said before. My favorite is definitely Rock Montreal, with On Fire at the Bowl being a very close second. So, Crown Jewel, as determined earlier, Rock Montreal from 1981. Now, as far as rating, does it slip into my top 10? I already told you, it's my number one. Gonna just go right to it. In my top 10 with a bullet, going right to the top. It pushes out Brighton Rock. It pushes down Little Good Valley. Now all the songs are at 10.5 or higher, because on PLD projects, we always rate things out of 11. So we always turn it up to 11 here on projects. So a scale of 1 to 11. Brighton Rock pushed down to the last of the 10s. At number 10, Little Good Valley, 10.5. Number 9, Love of My Life, 10.5. Number 8, You Take My Breath Away, 10.5. I like the ballads, it seems like. 7, The Millionaire Waltz at 10.5. 6, In the Lap of the Gods Revisited at 10.5. 5, The Prophet Song at 10.5. It's an epic power rock. 4, Bohemian Rhapsody at 10.5. 3, The March of the Black Queen, the first of the 11s. 2, White Queen as it began, 11. And then now number 1, Somebody to Love at a perfect 11. Well, that's going to wrap it up for this week, folks. Stay tuned next week as we get into a very, very heavy song, a political song, a bluesy rock number, some of their most hard rock moments on this album specifically. Brian May penned the track called White Man, and it's a one to definitely listen to. So stay tuned for that. If you do appreciate and like this, please hit a like, hit a subscribe, leave us a 5-star review on the audio if you can. Help out the channel. Want to help with the channel further? PLD Products has a Patreon, patreon.com/PLD Products. Join such luminaries as Austin Goodell, Jeremiah Morris, Matthew Kearns, Brandon Buckingham, Jeff Alterman. Couldn't do it without you guys and the rest of you, the crew as well. Really appreciate you keeping the lights on. Love you. I love you guys so much. So, all right, that'll do it. We will see you next week. Until then, God save the Queen. Keep yourself alive. Find yourself somebody to love. And keep on rocking. Bye now.